Welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Our team's goal is to present science-based information about gardening and all things nature in New York's Hudson Valley. Hosts Jean and Tim, along with team members Teresa and Linda, are master gardener volunteers for New York's Columbia and Greene counties. So if you're interested in gardening or nature, or nuggets of information about what's happening outside your door, settle in. Enjoy the conversation. Whatever the season, we have something to say.
Hello and welcome back to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. I'm Jean Thomas.
And I'm Annie Scibienski.
Oh boy, more food. Plate.This this time expands the repertoire of greens in cooking to kale, broccoli rabe, and chard. I don't know why, but I'm craving bacon to go with these heartier greens.
Then Jean jumps into the mystique of pH. We all talk about it, and we all did science experiments with it in grade school. But what is it really?
Then Devin Russ chimes in with hits and myths, taking on the turf lovers topic of lawn thatch and the mythology attached to it. I think it's all food for thought.
I'm a master gardener volunteer. My name's Annie Scibienski, and I'm happy to be part of the Nature Calls podcast team. On today's episode of Patched Plate, we're again talking about greens. In our last segment, I talked about soft, pliable greens like spinach and arugula. Today I want to talk about sturdier greens like kale, Swiss chard, and broccoli rabe. Leafy greens are nutritious, and the varieties that grow well in our area are almost limitless. The Cornell list of vegetables to grow in New York include over 25 varieties of kale alone. In general, greens pair well with garlic and olive oil and grated cheese too, like Asiago, Jack, or Parmesan. Massaged kale salad has gained popularity with good reason. I've included a link to this delicious salad in our show notes, but here's the general approach. You strip the kale leaves from the stems using your finger. In a large bowl, combine the destemmed kale leaves with a teaspoon of olive oil, juice from a lemon, 2 to 3 tablespoons, and some salt. Put an additional teaspoon of olive oil on your hands to coat, and then, using the massaging action similar to kneading bread dough, start to tear the leaves apart and massage them. Continue massaging for a few minutes, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on how tough your leaves are, but they should be softened. And they'll also turn a more vibrant green as you massage them. Great additions to this basic preparation include cranberries and/or pistachios, chunks of avocado, and mango is delicious with massaged kale too. Think about the variations you'd like to have in the bowl once you taste the massaged kale. Swiss chard's among my favorite vegetables. It seems to me to be one of those really versatile vegetables that keeps on giving. I keep my plants going long into the fall with a translucent bed cover to create a mini hothouse. This year the plants overwintered and came back strong in the spring. With a few plants in the garden, I can almost harvest 6 or 7 big rainbow chard leaves, the perfect portion for the next recipe I want to talk about. It's an old recipe from Supernatural Cooking by Heidi Swanson. I've included my adaptation in the show notes. Here's how I go about it. I boil a kettle of water and pour it over a half a pound of large white beans. If I can find them, I like to use gigante beans, which are extra large white runner beans. When I can't find them, I use the largest dried lima beans available. I soak them for 4 hours or more, even overnight. The skins get all wrinkly. Then I drain them and I cook the beans. You bring them to boil in a big pot of fresh, salted water. Turn the burner down to simmer and let them cook. They take a while depending on the age of the beans, even though you've already pre-soaked them. You can start testing in 30 minutes, but they'll likely take 40 or even a little bit more. I test them by straining a bean out of the pot, putting it on a board, and cutting it in half. I want to visually inspect that the very center of the bean is done. If it's cooked completely through, there will be no white spot in the center. You want it completely translucent. Once the beans are cooked and drained, or if you start with previously cooked, thoroughly rinsed canned beans, pull the dish together. To do this, heat your largest skillet to medium-high and off-heat spray with olive oil. Put the beans in a skillet in a single layer and let them sit there on that medium-high heat without stirring them for 3 or 4 minutes. You want them to brown. Flip the beans and let the other side brown. Remember when I said the skins get wrinkly? The wrinkles get crispy, crusty. Season with salt and pepper, add diced onion and chopped chard stems, and sauteed for a few more minutes until the stems are softened. Add your Swiss chard leaves cut into wide ribbons. Stir until the chard leaves begin to wilt. Taste it. Add more salt and pepper to taste. To serve, drizzle it with a little olive oil. Sprinkle it with freshly grated Parmesan. Even though we're a household of 2, I still make the full batch that serves 6 as a side, and we get a couple of full meals out of it. The leftovers are great too. Just reheat. The recipe author Heidi Swanson has a similar recipe using kale and walnuts. It's all over the internet, but I'll add a tested link to the show notes. This too is a tasty one. Finally, let's prepare broccoli rabe, also known as rapini. You can serve it as a side. You can add seared shrimp, tofu, spicy chickpeas, even pasta. You could serve this over rice. This is really versatile. You just need a bunch of broccoli rabe, washed with the ends trimmed, and pantry ingredients you probably already have. Olive oil, kosher salt, garlic cloves, crushed red pepper flakes, some unsalted butter, lemon, zested and juiced, and some Parmesan cheese for serving. I like to bring a large pot of salted water to a boil, blanch the broccoli rabe, then shock it in an ice bath. 2 minutes in the boiling water, 2 minutes in the ice bath, drain. While the greens are draining, heat a large skillet over medium heat, add a film of olive oil with the garlic and chili flakes, sweat for a minute or 2 until it's just fragrant. Move the broccoli rabe into the saute pan and add a pat of butter, season with salt and pepper. Continue to cook this until the broccoli rabe is warmed and the garlic is cooked through. Add lemon juice and zest, and then serve with grated Parmesan over the top. The idea is to take this simple recipe and make it your own. Pick the flavors and add-ins that you and your family know and love to eat. For other recipes, go to our Cornell website. There's a nutrition page there where you can find more recipes. Enjoy. That's it for this edition of From Patch to Plate. I'm Annie Scibienski.
You're listening to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley. Stay tuned for It's All Greek to Me.
Hi, this is Jean again. Welcome to another segment of It's All Greek to Me. As promised, I'll be talking about the mysterious topic of pH. That's spelled little p, capital H. If you've done any serious gardening at all, you've heard discussions about pH and the high or low numbers you get when you get a soil test and what your vegetables prefer. Experienced gardeners ramble on about how they're adjusting their pH or how their soil is acid or alkaline. It's not a secret code, but I'll tell you a secret. A lot of these gardeners are clueless about the science behind pH. All we know or care about really is the results. But it's kind of interesting to take a look into the science of soil chemistry. Don't panic. Chemistry was the one class in school that just plain baffled me. So here goes. pH is commonly defined as potential of hydrogen or power of hydrogen. This whole scale starts with plain water, H2O. That's 2 hydrogen molecules to 1 oxygen molecule. Pure water is considered neutral for purposes of this scale, or the number 7. There's no way I'm going to discuss the choice of numbers in this scale. It's tough enough to try to explain how it's useful to gardeners. Let's think back to school experiments with litmus paper that changed color. When we start with pure water and add components of the soil, a reaction happens. Water consists of positive hydrogen cations and negative hydroxyl anions. That's how the molecule's constructed. If the solution created dissolves and produces more hydrogen ions, an acid solution is created. If the solution creates more hydroxyl ions, the solution is deemed base or alkaline. So a pH test measures the positive, hydrogen, versus the negative, hydroxyl, and assigns a place on the scale. Neutral is plain water at 7. Negative or acid tests as less than 7. The lower the reading, the more acid it is. Higher readings mean more alkaline. There are many soil tests available based on this system of measurement. So how does this apply to the soil we plant into? Well, the acidity or alkalinity of soil determines what nutrients become available to the plants. Hydroxyl ions interfere with uptake of certain nutrients, so most plants thrive more readily in a soil with a pH closer to neutral or slightly acid because a wider variety of nutrients are accessible. As you choose plants, then, pH is important. If you first find the pH value of your soil, then find the pH requirement of the plants you want to grow, you have the core data to become successful. If your soil is very acid and you want to grow blueberries or azaleas, you're in luck. If you have alkaline soil and want to grow blueberries or azaleas, you get to become a chemist in a way. Here's where you learn about soil correction. When you ask an expert how to change your pH, you'll most likely get a casual response of either add sulfur for more acidity or add lime for more alkaline soil. They're probably correct, but it requires more attention to detail than just flinging a bag of additive onto the soil. Most importantly, you're working with minerals to change things. Give the amendment at least a year to work into the soil before you plant. And as always, Cooperative Extension Master Gardener volunteers can help with the details. Well, that was some brain exercise. Let's treat ourselves to some lighter fare. I was wondering the other day if there was a new hybrid of monkshood. Monkshood is botanically called Aconitum napellus. Aconitum is probably from the Greek word akon, meaning dart, as it was used as an arrow poison, and napellus refers to the root from which the poison was derived. The name monkshood describes the shape of the gorgeous blue flower that looks like a monk's hood or a medieval helmet. Whenever I admire my own plant, I think there must be a variety named after Darth Vader from Star Wars fame. Finally, I looked for one, but there isn't one yet. However, much to my delight, I found a begonia, Darth Vaderiana. It's a newly discovered begonia species that's almost perfectly black with a lime green edge. They're still pretty rare, but I think I need one. Gotta go now. Gotta rest up from all that pH talk. Let's talk some more Latin next time.
You're listening to Nature Calls, conversations from the Hudson Valley. Stay tuned for Hits and Myths.
Hello, this is Devin Russ. I'm a Master Gardener volunteer with the Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene counties, and I'm here with an episode of Hits or Myths. Today I'm going to talk about lawn thatch. Do you have to worry about thatch in your lawn? It can be a lot of work to care for your grass. You have to mow, rake leaves, fill holes, and fix bare spots. You might have to water. There are lots of products you can buy, like fertilizers and weed killers, and then more work to spread them. You can buy specialized equipment, too, like dethatching machines. Is dethatching worth the extra expense and effort? Thatch is a layer of dead plant material sitting on the soil at the base of the grass plants. Usually, plant material that falls to the ground is good for plants. Dead leaves and stems in a forest or a meadow hold moisture around plants and eventually get broken down by insects and microorganisms and become part of the soil. Adding mulch to your garden imitates this natural process. So, why isn't thatch good for the grass plants? The problem is that lawns with thatch are adding new material to the layer of organic matter faster than insects and microorganisms can break it down. Why does this happen? The answer is probably that the owners of the thatchy lawn are doing too much. They are most likely using a lot of fertilizer and watering often, so the grass is growing as fast as it possibly can. Grass that is growing super fast is not just making green leaves, it's also making excess stems and roots that add to the thatch. The lawn owners that do too much are probably also using chemicals, weed killers, fungicides, and pesticides that have killed off some of the insects and microorganisms in and on the soil. The result is that organic matter is added to the thatch layer at a faster rate, but biologic activity to break it down is slowed. The layer of dead plant material builds up until it gets thick enough to cause trouble. It can prevent air from moving easily through the soil, and it can keep light rain from soaking in. So, do you need to dethatch? Well, the better answer to excess thatch would be to do less to the lawn so that natural processes can reach a balance. Don't over-fertilize. The best time to use fertilizer is in the fall, when our cool season grasses are growing rapidly. There's no need for fertilizer in hot weather when it's normal for grasses to be dormant. And don't overwater. Most lawn grasses tolerate dry spells. Even if the grass turns brown, that doesn't mean it is dying for lack of water. That just means that the heat is making it go dormant. Don't add lime unless you first test your soil and know that it is too acid. And don't use pesticides unless you know exactly what insect is causing damage. Lots of insects are beneficial, but if you use a pesticide, you will kill them all indiscriminately. If you see some grass symptom that you think is caused by insects, it would be a good idea to wait a while and see if it doesn't resolve itself. When insects do damage grass, the damage often slows down on its own as the pests run through their life cycle or are eaten by other creatures. And finally, don't use weed killers without doing some physical weeding first. There are some excellent hand tools that can help uproot dandelions or plantain. That may be easier than you think. Every time you refrain from using herbicides, you let the community of living things in the soil grow. As the life of the soil becomes more complex, you may have many individual organisms that damage a bit of grass in this way or that, but you are less likely to see any one pest or disease grow to be a major outbreak. And you will also have beneficial organisms that nourish the grass or that attack pests. Some people think that leaving the grass clippings on your lawn will cause thatch. Actually, grass clippings are good for your lawn. They return nutrients to the soil. They add organic matter, which helps the soil have the right balance of moisture and encourages the growth of beneficial organisms. So by all means, leave the grass clippings. To avoid having too thick a pile of grass clippings at any one time, don't mow when the grass is wet. And also, don't let the grass get too long. It's easier on the grass if you cut off only a little bit at a time. If you just cut a little bit, and only when it's dry, those little bits will sift down through the grass stems and not smother the surface. And the living things in the soil will break down the clippings. That adds fertility and improves the structure of the soil. You might be worrying, if I'm not letting the grass get too long before I mow, that means I'm mowing more often. Yikes! That sounds like more work. It's true that you should mow frequently if you're going to leave the clippings, but it's also true that it's going to be much easier each time you mow. Studies have found out that when you leave the bag off the lawnmower, it takes much less time to finish mowing, so much less that you can mow more often and still be saving time. And by mowing more often and letting only little clippings stay on the lawn, you don't create a problem with thatch. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Hits and Myths.
That concludes another episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. We would like to thank Sandra Linnell and Devin Connolly from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties for production support. And a special thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. You can find links to any of the topics mentioned in this episode at our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org. Comments and suggestions for future topics may be directed to us at columbiagreenmgb@cornell.edu or on the CCE Master Gardener Volunteers of Columbia and Greene Counties Facebook page. For more information about Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties, visit our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org or visit us in Hudson or in Acra. Cornell Cooperative Extension provides equal programming and employment opportunities